Welcome to the IpX True North podcast, where we connect people, processes, and tools.
Welcome back to another True North podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Anderson. I'm joined once again by Michael Levin, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. For those of you that didn't join us the last time, but he's just an industry expert when it comes to all things cybersecurity. So real honored to have you back. Looking forward to this discussion, Michael. Hope you're doing well. But if you could just tell our audience and our listeners who you are and a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. Michael Levin, spent 30 years in government and law enforcement and public service, 22 years with the Secret Service, worked in the White House for many years, did the Secret Service protection thing, but my expertise in the Secret Service was cybersecurity. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Secret Service has joint jurisdiction with the FBI on cybercrime investigations. And so I got hired in the Secret Service in 1985 when kind of computers were in their infancy. And we really had to learn how to investigate crimes that were occurring throughout the United States. And so had a lot of experience doing that along with the protection thing, and then worked for the Secret Service in Seattle for a few years at a task force at Microsoft, and then managed the Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force program, and eventually retired as a deputy director at the National Cybersecurity Division at Homeland Security. Ended up working for Microsoft for about 9 years after I retired. And I started this cybersecurity training business called the Center for Information Security Awareness in 2007. And we really started it as a side gig because we all had major jobs that we were doing, day to day. But we believed that cyber crime was going to be a huge problem in the United States. So we thought that training was one of the biggest things that's lacking in our society and in our government and in our schools and colleges and universities. So we wanted to figure out a way to offer this kind of training to get people up to speed on what they should be clicking on every day and what's good, safe hygiene while you're on the computer.
And one, thanks for joining me again. I look forward to this. Had a great time. And, I know we've talked about making this more of a reoccurring series, and I hope we could stay the course on that. One thing, since we last talked, and obviously I knew what was going on, but you've been really doing some exciting things within your organization and how you're going to be able to offer this training and actually interact, not just nationally, but internationally with these organizations and their workforce and individuals. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we partnered with your company as well as with Lightspeed Virtual Training, and we've basically taken our training to the next level. I mean, everybody's taken e-learning where you get online and you listen to some sort of a narration and you have to answer a couple quiz questions and then you move on to get to the next lesson. And so we wanted to change it up and we wanted to offer more interactive training. So we've been able to do that through Lightspeed. And our goal really is to provide kind of this ongoing subscription that will offer companies and organizations kind of an ongoing approach to, there's a new scam out today, maybe we need to alert our people so they don't fall victim. And the beauty of what we're doing is 100% of everything we're doing is just as relevant with your personal stuff, with your banking and your normal day-to-day stuff as it is with your work stuff, since everything's interconnected. So I'm a firm believer that we're not doing a very good job of educating, let's just start with a kid that's 7 years old and they're playing with their parents' computer or their phones. And they don't know really, no one's teaching them what to click on. And then you take that to, you've got an IT professional that's working for a large organization, and the large organization's doing phishing testing, and the IT professional keeps flunking the phishing testing. So we're missing something here. We're really missing the concept of, we got to educate everybody. We all have to be at a basic level of understanding with physical safety and security, as well as computer safety and security.
And you touched on something for me that I've kind of been on this mission or soapbox for the last few years on our side of the house, right? We're really focused on operations, end-to-end quality excellence in the way a company operates, the products that they design, they manufacture, they service. And the reality is a lot of organizations factor recalls and quality defects in kind of the warranty, and it's this battle of getting leaders to understand why a small investment up front on proper education, proper certifications, proper training, the ROI is monumental downstream. But typically in our world, on the IpX side, we get called in when there's a fire, right? Even though these companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on new IT solutions, they're still designing products that fall out of the sky, or the brakes don't work, or their airbags kill people. I mean, I could go on and on. Your toothpaste that's got lead in it. For us, and what I want to ask you, obviously, I'm a little bit more rough around the edges when it comes to these things because I've been impacted by it. But when it comes to cyber attacks and hacking and true cybersecurity and phishing and awareness, how can we solve this, what I perceive to be complacency? And I'll give you a good example, Michael, and I really owe you a thank you. And as we've talked, I've always been diligent about monitoring and being aware of potential phishing, really robust phishing organizations. And I believe the cybersecurity is $1 trillion. The hackers, the ones that are really trying to do things nefariously, it's a business to them. A couple days ago, I got an email, a beautifully written email. It looked like it was from one of my employees. It sounded like him in the email. He signed off on it like it would have been him. And he was asking to change his direct deposit information from his account, which I thought was an odd question. That was one of those outliers, right? You're like, would they normally, you and I have talked about that.
Right.
And instantly I looked at where the email came from, and it wasn't from him. And in the past, you and I have talked, and then the lesson you've taught me is don't assume everyone in your organization is going to do the same thing. You need to have a communication, a process to say, hey, something's going on. And I did instantly communicated it to my team and him directly and said, hey, all hands, be aware. This is new. This is coming our way.
Yeah.
What do you see from your side? And do you have a message for these companies that are going, what's the ROI for investing in this training for our people? And that question, although there's some validity to it, man, that question starts to annoy me after a while because there's no context. How do you see, and how can we solve this, and how can we educate these business leaders and business owners?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. In my training, we talk about the riskiest email you're going to get is from a name you recognize. And so that kind of scares people from the concept of, well, I get emails every day from people that I recognize. And the clue for you was he's asking for you to do something that, may have financial ramifications. So, obviously, whenever there's some sort of an email that relays any kind of financial ramifications, that we want to, take that extra step, which is in every case, probably reaching out to the individual and verifying via a phone call. We have millions and millions of dollars worth of loss every year in this business enterprise fraud that occurs where a vendor calls up and says, I need to change something in my account or wire the money to this account, and it ends up being a scam. And a lot of organizations fall victim to that. But I want to step back for a second to, the initial part of your question, which is, and I want to use the analogy for, especially for your customers, is that if an organization is going to build an airline new engine or something, they have a process that they must go through to get to the final product. And that's kind of what your organization is all about in a lot of ways, is how do we go from point A to point B, and how do we do it safely? How do we make sure that we're doing it in a manner that we have the right checks and balances? The problem with cybersecurity is no one's really told anybody what to look for and how these scams are constantly changing. And, we all have three really important reasons why we need to worry about this. One, we have nation states, we have organized crime groups, we have professional hackers that you mentioned that are targeting us every day. Our personal accounts are being attacked every day. Whether you realize it or not, your Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo account is getting phishing emails. You may think of them as spam messages or innocuous kind of messages, but if you're not careful and you click on something in one of those messages, you're going to get your computer infected. And lastly, our businesses are being attacked every day, and they're being attacked by, if it's a defense industry or anybody in the critical infrastructure, they're being attacked by nation states. They're being attacked by organized crime groups, and then they're being attacked by competitors. So competitors want to get into business systems so they can see what you're up to, so they can maybe get ahead of the game. And that competitor could be from a foreign country. And it's interesting because the DHS and the government just said, oh, we're being attacked, and we're getting attacked by all these nation states. I mean, this has been going on for over 20 years. And so we really have to step up to the plate as a country and a society in kind of getting a base knowledge for everybody in our society and in our country to what to look for every day.
Yeah. And the one thing that kind of scares me, and hopefully you could shed some light, and I'd like to get your perspective, with where we're at with artificial intelligence and the capability on the software. And a lot of people use the AI buzzword, and I understand why it's easy, but it's really very, very sophisticated software that's able to do some things that, quite honestly, I don't think people realize, how fast it's evolving, especially with images and what most people call deep fakes, and technology where after we're done with this podcast, they could take my image and take my voice, and they can make me say whatever I want and make it look very realistic, probably better, and make my grammar better than what I have now, which isn't a bad thing. But the reality is, to me, that's the next evolution of cyber attacks, which is these very, very complex and sophisticated AI models where it's no longer just through phishing and through email. It appears, and there are examples where there have been ransom requests because someone has been able to use someone's voice and do a phishing attack on, parents where they feel like their child has been kidnapped, and that's a personal fear. But I think also on the business front, that opens us up to, I think the investment for the training you offer is the ROI pays for itself if you keep yourself from being attacked once, let alone, like you said, you're being attacked 24/7, basically. Where do you think we're headed, and how does the industry need to shift and get ahead of this? Because to be honest with you, Michael, from my perspective, I think it's all reactionary. I don't know if we're ahead of this one yet. It looks fun and, humorous when people are taking people's images and making them say and do things, but we've seen some of that where it could be nefarious and very damaging too. There's a thing going on, unfortunately, with Taylor Swift, right? Where her image has been used against her will in some very nefarious and, quite honestly, disgusting things. And I think that, I don't know if businesses realize that's headed our way, with our people and with our executives, and we need to be aware of these things.
Yeah, AI is really a scary, concept when it comes to cybercrime and things of that nature. You're taking the opportunity for people that may not have the cybersecurity expertise to just automate things and automate criminal acts that are definitely kind of scary should be to individuals and to businesses as well. I'm not one of these guys that thinks we need more regulations, but the concept here is that any company that's providing any AI support has to have responsibility in place to protect. I'll give you a perfect example. If you went on ChatGPT and you said, craft a good phishing email so I can scam somebody, it should automatically recognize that as something that they shouldn't be doing, and it should give you some sort of response that says we can't do that. And right now, depending on how you write it, it will do that with ChatGPT. But there's a lot of all these other side AI companies that may not do that or may not care to do that. We've talked about the dark web for years, and I guarantee you there's stuff on the dark web already that's using AI to do bad things. So we just need to come up with a mechanism so any company, any legitimate AI company, has responsibility to ensure that they're protecting the good of the public. And that's a tough sell for a lot of these companies, especially if they're startup and they just want to make money. They don't care. So it's really an ongoing problem. But here's the thing that I think is probably the most relevant that I say in every one of my presentations. The most dangerous thing we do each day is click on links and attachments and emails. And we need to do a better job. We need to slow down. And I use the analogy of getting your head in the game. When I was in the Secret Service, we used to ride in motorcades and we're in this follow up vehicle behind the president in the limo and the beast, right? And we're in this armored Suburban and we're looking out the window and maybe it's a 15-minute motorcade. And eventually, potentially the guys will start shooting the breeze in the back. How's your kid? Just normal conversations to take up the time. And the boss in the front seat's going to turn around and say, hey, get your head in the game. Focus on the task at hand. And this is really what we have to do every time we open up an email message. We have to do a much better job of focusing on the task at hand, which is potentially a very risky task. And most Americans and most businesses don't look at it that way. They look at email as a production tool, a productivity tool, something that is helping their business to move forward. But what they don't realize is that if that employee clicks on that phishing email and ransomware gets into the company, we're now at a standstill till we figure it out. And so by training people what to look for every day, it becomes kind of muscle memory. Right now, we have bad muscle memory. We just click on stuff without thinking about it. So we got to change that muscle memory and actually get people to start thinking about it before they click on it.
And you touched on it earlier, and it's a big one for me that I've worked with my staff, and I think it's generational, but I think it's also, like you said, we've been conditioned to operate a certain way. And while you're going through that conditioning, you forget some best practices. And one of them is pick up the phone, right? And there's nothing wrong with picking up a phone and just verifying. Did you send me an email with a link in it from an email address that I don't recognize? Don't be in a hurry, even though it says subject line from such and such. And sometimes I've noticed in the actual email domain, they have the name of the individual. It's just the what follows the at symbol, so it's not just, they're getting really good at the script. They're getting good at all of it and taking the time to create these fake accounts with an individual's name. And what I'd love to hear from you is just kind of walk us through, if I'm a business owner and an executive, let's say I have a company that's got 5,000, 10,000 employees. What does your training offer and how should we walk through that? Why should we offer certain levels? Is it the whole package? Is it, medical device or medical industry? We've got HIPAA training. Can you just walk us through your portfolio?
Yeah, so we don't just go after the compliance training market, which is credit card compliance and HIPAA compliance. We're trying to get everybody to a certain level. So we offer what's called security awareness training, which is also called cybersecurity awareness training. And that is, we have two levels of that. We have a level 1, which is a 9-lesson course, which is about an hour and a half. And then we have a 15-lesson course, which is a little over 2 hours worth of training. And in each one of the courses, you get a certificate, but it's a lesson, let's say phishing or password protection or social engineering. And each lesson has quizzing and some interactivity during the lesson to try to get, to make sure people are paying attention. And we're telling hopefully interesting stories that employees will actually get something out of through the training. And then for our credit card compliance called PCI DSS training, same thing, level 1, level 2. And we offer the ideas that for compliance training, the rules say that employees must be trained upon hire and annually. So for PCI credit card compliance, it's annually. For HIPAA training, HHS says every 2 years. So once again, upon hire, and every 2 years for HIPAA training. It works for most organizations. The idea is that You want to create a base level of understanding. And many organizations have employees sign something called the acceptable use policy statement. And if you're in the audience and you're not using an acceptable use policy statement right now, you should be. The acceptable use policy statement is going to teach people or provide documentation to employees what they can and cannot do with company resources. So it's like if you tell your employees, you know what, you shouldn't let your kids use your work laptop. And you say in a policy statement, it says, not only should you not do it, we have a policy that says your kids or spouse should not use your work laptop. It puts them on notice so that when they do that, an organization has some sort of a mechanism to deal with these kinds of problems. They can't just say, well, we didn't tell them, so we can't punish them. The other thing is we're seeing now more and more organizations that are doing phishing testing. You flunk 5 phishing testings. A lot of companies, there's some companies, I shouldn't say a lot, but companies are starting to fire people or put them on some sort of a performance review if they continuously flunk phishing testing. But my belief is that phishing testing alone doesn't solve the problem. You've got to teach the employees the why. And the phishing testing doesn't do that. It just teaches them, oh, this looks like suspicious, so I shouldn't click on it. The idea would be, why was it suspicious? And why do you have skin in the game in that message if you click on it? So a lot of it is in our training kind of entrenched. And one of the things that I'm really the most proud of right now is our reviews. We have a bunch of Google reviews, and a lot of it's for my in-person training where I get hired to come into a business and train the employees. And depending on the companies, we've done up to 1,000 employees over several days, but we do webinars also. But the idea is that the employees love the training. And that's, to me, the best testament I can have to the value is if the employees enjoy it, they write good reviews, they tell us that they got something out of it, and they look forward to doing it again next year. So most of my customers end up being repeat customers. So it's a value add, and I love what I do. That's the best part for any job is if you love what you do, I'm passionate about it, and I believe that I can help organizations to do a much better job to create a culture of security within that organization.
There's 2 elements there that I want to kind of use as a bookend for this episode. One, it's about accountability. You didn't use the word, but for me, that's a big deal. It's not just about teaching accountability to the business, but to the individual. And like you said, you've got some skin in the game, personally and professionally. And I do think the work from home for the last 3 years has been kind of chipped away at some of that. And there's been this gray area, but I do think it's important for businesses to say, hey, this is your work property. This isn't personal property. So from a liability perspective, we need to have a policy. This is how and what you'll use this laptop for, and understand why. But also, like you said, there's some skin in the game, right? If you're failing a phishing, audit 5 times, that either one, like you said, you haven't been properly trained, or you just don't care. That's my perspective. That's Joe's opinion. Right. But it goes back to teaching accountability. And the one thing that I love, and this, Mike,
accountability is key.
The accountability on all sides of the house. And that's one that I've been a proponent on. And then I want to kind of end it on what you said, because we're both educators at the end of the day, and we want to make an impact for good, and you love what you do and I love what I do. And this, at times it can be exhausting when you're trying to get that value prop in front of the right people, but you really hit it. For me, you hit the nail on the head, or hit the ball out of the park, however you want to say, you put the ball in the back of the net, depending on where you're at and where you're listening to this from. But for me, it's, your people want to get together. And a lot of companies are struggling to figure out, how to get their people to collaborate again, how they're getting them back together, either virtually or in the office. One of the best ways of doing that is providing them good training and good workshops, hands-on discussions where they could see each other and go, oh, I didn't know you did that in your department. We do this differently. We read the policy differently here. Let's figure that out. Let's make it better. But these training sessions, these workshops allow your people to come together and kind of breaks the monotony of the everyday work. And for me as an educator, as a service provider, much like you, I get no greater joy than the reviews we have from our sessions, which is our company needs this. I know you get it. I've seen some of your reviews. Our company needs more of this. How do we do this? And that's where, we're trying to help our advocates to push it up, right? When it comes top down, that's great. But typically these things start somewhere either bottom up in an organization or in the middle. And, the one thing I would love for any leader within an organization that's listening to this, or if you're an advocate, is don't give up, but get your people together, because these things are not only important to the security of your business, to the security of you as an individual, but it also gives you an opportunity to come together and to collaborate and to actually define what accountability means to your organization and to you as an individual. So I don't know if you want to add to that one, Michael, but for me, that's
Yeah.
really how I wanted to close it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Security at all levels is a team sport. Many communities have something called neighborhood watch, where where you live, you have maybe a sign up in your thing in your house sometimes, where they have signs up in the street that says, report suspicious activity, share the information with your neighbors. And cybercrime is no different. And you don't want to be a victim, and you don't want the people you care about to be a victim. So you have to create this community, just as exactly as you're saying, where you're sharing information and you're collaborating. And when you have the opportunity to share information, I mean, a perfect example of this, you see online that a gas station near your house has been investigated for skimming, where inside the pump they have a skimmer where they're taking your credit card information. I mean, wouldn't you want to tell your spouse about that? Wouldn't you want to tell the people that you care about that may go to that gas station? Cybersecurity is the same exact thing. We want to create a community within organizations where everybody's watching out for each other. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle.
No, I think it's perfect. For me, I'm just going to kind of reiterate the three key takeaways that I've got personally from this episode. And I really look forward to doing this again. And I know, Michael, you and I've been kind of busy this last month, but I hope we could do this at least once a month. But for me, there's three key elements that I've heard, and I hope our listeners and our watchers write this down. Accountability. Accountability is key. You heard Michael say it. I agree. It's personal and professional. It's both sides. You can't put all the blame and all the liability on the business when you as an individual are equally as responsible. Collaboration, being aware, communicating. Don't just, hunker down in your own silo. These things, get it out there, get the message out there. The more we talk about this, the more that we communicate what's going on and share that awareness, the better off we're all going to be. And then the third one for me is stay relevant. And I know we didn't use those words, but Michael, you really kind of outlined the process of, you have onboarding and then maybe every 2 years, or maybe it's every 12 months, but we have to stay relevant with what's going on in the world. Because if we took cybersecurity training 15 years ago, a little bit's changed. It's the same issue on our house. If you've taken a product quality training 15 years ago, now some of the principles are still very relevant, but a lot's changed. We have embedded software. We have artificial intelligence and autonomous intelligence within our products now, right? We have vehicles that can self-drive and make decisions on their own. And now we're in that gray area of what's a software change, an infill change to a product. So for me, it's accountability, it's collaboration, it's community, and just stay relevant, And the only way you can do that is by educating yourself. But Michael, I could do this all day long, but our production crew has got us on a time window. Thank you again for joining me, my friend. I look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully sometime soon as well.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being with you today, and please let me know. Let's do another one when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And stay tuned for the next IpX True North podcast.
Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe and review the show. And for more information on IpX, visit ipxhq.com.